Hello there, Assalamu alaikum, and greetings of peace and blessings. Welcome to the UK launch of the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2020 and 2021. This is your host, Iman Ali, research analyst at DinarStandard, and one of the report authors privileged to be authoring these special features on Gen Z, women entrepreneurs, and the tech case studies. Today, we have with us prestige panelists to enlighten us on the global and the UK state of the Islamic economy. To run you through the agenda for today, we have a keynote address by Mr. Abdulla Awar, CEO of Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, followed by the key insights of the report and the UK context by Mr. Rafi-uddin Shikoh, CEO of DinarStandard. And then we have a very insightful conversation with UK Islamic economy pioneers, driven by Mr. Abdul Basit, co-founder and principal at Ellipsis, with Mr. Iqbal Khan, CEO of Fajr Capital, and with Ms. Stella Cox, CBE, Managing Director at DDCap Group. All right, so before we begin, before we have the keynote speak by Mr. Abdullah Awar, I would like to give you guys a quick question, a poll on the Islamic economy, especially with context to the UK Islamic economy, given that it is one of the fastest growing non-OIC countries in terms of the Islamic economy. So can we have the polls out, please? Okay, here you have two questions. Number one, the UK is one of the fastest growing economy, as I just mentioned. What do you think UAE ranked in the Global Islamic Economy Index in 2019? Was it 18th position, 22nd, 30th, or 45? And then which halal economy lifestyle sector do you think the UK had the highest Muslim consumer spend in 2019? Lifestyle sectors include food, media recreation, fashion, and travel. So which of these do you think UK had the highest Muslim consumer spend? Giving you a few more seconds to answer these questions, and then you will find the right answer during Mr. Rafi-uddin's presentation on key insights and UK context of the report. Great, thanks everyone for taking the poll. Now, without a further ado, let's start with today's proceedings. We are delighted to have Mr. Abdulla Awar, CEO of Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, to deliver the keynote address. Mr. Abdul Awar, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Iman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone, and good morning those joining us in the West. Good evening those who are on the East. Nowadays, when we greet, we have to always consider all the regions, because everyone is able to join from everywhere around the globe. Very excited to be here today. I wanted to thank, of course, our co-host or host of the launch today, Fajr Capital. Excited to see my friends and colleagues, Brother Iqbal Khan, Mrs. Stella Cox from DDCap. I wanted to thank Abdul Basit for agreeing to moderate as well today's exciting conversation. I mean, for us, the journey has been quite an exciting one from 2013 when the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center first started. And the way that we have seen these sectors grow globally and become adopted globally as well. And embraced is quite amazing. The report itself, I believe, has provided over the years a very important resource for governments that want to formulate strategies around the Islamic economy sectors, but also for the private sector to consider what investment opportunities are there across these sectors. I will not, of course, reveal a lot of the findings of the report in the 2020-2021 edition. I'm sure Brother Rafi-uddin will share a lot of that. But for all of us, I believe 2020 has been a very, very interesting year in terms of the challenges that we have faced from the beginning of the year until now. If it did one thing, in my opinion, I think the silver lining of the pandemic was that we actually have embraced technological advancements much faster than we would have anticipated. Today's launch is proof. All of us are joining, virtually and launching it. And there has been many such events and webinars and meetings that we have attended virtually and seamlessly have been able to interact with one another. It's almost, safe to say that if the pandemic didn't occur, we wouldn't have, I believe, embraced such, technologies, I think, for another 4 or 5 years. So that's quite interesting. But also interesting is how the sectors, the Islamic economy sectors specifically, are faring, with this pandemic and most importantly, maybe post-COVID-19 as well. It is my belief that a lot of these sectors will prove that beneficial when it comes to the recovery post-COVID-19. We have actually seen some of the sectors did not stop growing. I mean, food, for example, comes to mind immediately, halal foods, and many more. So very excited, about the discussions that will take place today. As far as the UK is concerned, I'm also not surprised that UK takes a leading position as well in the Global Islamic Economy Indicator, being the fastest growing non-OIC country in terms of the growth of the Islamic economy sectors. And I believe it makes sense. It's centrally located around the globe with very good connectivity and infrastructure that will prove very useful when it comes to enhancing trade, but also the wealth of experience that exists in terms of the legal and professional background and companies that are able today to participate and contribute towards the development of innovative Islamic finance products. So definitely, I think UK does play an important role. This is why the UAE has always partnered across multiple streams. So it's not strange that we also partner across the Islamic economy sectors with our UK counterparts. I don't want to take a lot of time, in the remarks. I'm very excited about the conversation that will be held between Iqbal and Stella, and very excited about the presentation that Brother Rafi' will make on the report as well. With that being said, I wanted to thank everyone for joining the UK launch for the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the discussion today.
Thank you, Mr. Abdulla Awar. Thanks a lot. Now we have the presentation by Mr. Rafi-uddin on the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2020-21, key insights and the UK context. But before I call you over, Mr. Rafi-uddin, I would like the answers of the polls out so you could refer to them and see what our attendees have in mind. Okay, so what do you anticipate UK's rank in the GIES? Wow, most of them have said 18, well, 22 as well. And which sector do you see the Muslim consumer spending more? Is food, apparently, followed by travel, fashion, and then media. Exciting, and I'm sure you'll be surprised to know the results once Mr. Rafi-uddin presents his presentation. So, Mr. Rafi-uddin Shikoh, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Iman. Very warm good morning to all of you in the UK, and good afternoon, and may peace and blessings be upon all of you. Okay, So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining. I will take a short 10 to 12 minutes, and if we can show the summary video, we'll try to do so later. This year, this is the 8th edition, first of all, of this annual summary of a snapshot of what has happened throughout the year and our outlook. And as you can imagine, this year, given the COVID-19 and pandemic, very fascinating insights. Before I begin, on behalf of the 16-member team that worked on this report pretty much throughout the year, I'd like to thank first and foremost Dubai Capital, DIEDC, Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdulla Awar, and the leadership that Dubai has provided in bringing this objective thought leadership to at a global level, which I know as advisors, we have seen a tremendous impact that has had. I'd like to also thank Salam Gateway, which is the distribution, marketing partner for the report, as well as the design team this year, which has done a tremendous job of helping us articulate the message and communicate the insights in very interactive ways, very insightful ways. So I'd like to thank Google Studios, Bytech, and others, as well as finally our launch host, Fajr Capital. Thank you again, Brother Iqbal, for your support. This year, as always, we've also had tremendous support with various strategic contributions and partnership from around the world. IFANCA, which is one of the leading private halal certification body out of the United States, CIMB Islamic from Malaysia and also presence in Indonesia, MDEC, which is a digital agency of the Malaysian government, Crescent Wealth from Australia, the United Nations Human Commission for Refugees, Refinitiv, Duo Pharma, and Linkaja. And so we're very proud to have a very good, diverse set of strategic partners this year, as we've had last year as well. This year, we're also very excited that as of today, we will be launching this report in 14 different countries. This is, and we're continuously being asked to present it more in different markets. It shows, ladies and gentlemen, the importance, the growing, continuing growth of the importance of Islamic economy for national government level strategies in terms of economic diversification, as well as the private sector that these Islamic economy sectors that it represents. Quickly, I'd also like to cover the methodology that the report goes through. As I said, we've been doing this now for 8 years, bringing DinarStandard's own over 12 years of our research and analysis on the global Islamic economy. As I said, 16 team members worked on the report. This year in particular, we've interviewed over 52 industry professionals across the sectors and geographically distributed across the world to get their perspectives. We've leveraged Refinitiv's Islamic finance data, and we're thankful for their support in this capacity. We definitely have DinarStandard's own research around Muslim population estimates, investments tracking that we do, innovation tracking, the halal regulation and trade tracking that we do. We look through over, I would say, thousands of stories throughout the year, because the coverage of the report is a year, and the time frame is July, August of 2019 through July, August 2020, and about 450 stories are actually referenced in the report. Ultimately, the original insights come from our models around market sizing, the indicator, which is a government indicator and a benchmarking tool, the investment analysis, and really ultimately the signals of opportunities that we bring to you. The report is over 200 pages, freely available for all to leverage. It's broken down by providing an initial context of the drivers and the opportunity. We cover this year the COVID-19 impact on each of the sectors. We have our annual Islamic economy indicator, which is the government benchmark. We've done the most extensive investment analysis this year. And we're really excited to share with you this year 2 special features. One is on the growing prominence of women entrepreneurs in the Islamic economy. And I think this is one of the driving force of the Islamic economy that we're seeing now and we see in the future, as well as given the very young demographic that the Islamic countries have and the population of 1.9 billion worldwide has, a perspective of Generation Z on how they think about the Islamic economy. Then for each of these 7 sectors, we provide the last year's leading key developments, signals of opportunities, strategic considerations for investors, governments, and businesses distinctly because their needs and relevance is different. And given the prominence of technology, we cover technology case studies as well. I'm going to go through this fast because, and definitely because I want to get to the UK context as well as hear from Mr. Iqbal and Ms. Stella and Abdulla discussion with them. But continuing on the key insights from the report, one of the key ways we have covered the scope of the report, and we get asked, what do you mean by Islamic economy? We have a very structured approach, and the definition is what helps us select the sectors we cover in this report. And this definition is that those sectors whose core products and services are structurally affected by Islamic ethics and law. And by that definition, essentially, the major sectors that are affected by that definition are the following 6 real economy sectors of food, fashion, travel, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, media and recreation, as well as the prominent sector of Islamic finance. And so this year, we have estimated that the Muslim consumer spending, the 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide across the 6 real economy sectors at $2.02 trillion. Meanwhile, the Islamic finance assets stood at 2.88 trillion. And this is this obviously begs the question of how has this been progressing and what are the projections. Our forecast for 2020, because this is a key one to analyze for us this year, is that across the 6 real economy sectors, about a negative 8.1% in consumer spending worldwide is what we anticipate. However, we see that these sectors will project to grow at a CAGR, cumulative aggregate growth of 3.1% through 2024 to reach 2.4 trillion. Now, one thing to see is that across these sectors, obviously different sectors are affected in different ways. Travel was hit the worst, while food sector fared the best relatively vis-a-vis the impact of the pandemic. We have great insights from our Generation Z contributors from across the world and sharing their views on finance, halal food, etc. And I think you'll find that very insightful, as well as a real impressive mix of women entrepreneurs from across the world and across the sectors that we cover that are highlighted in the report as well. And lastly, given the acceleration of digital transformation, and we were discussing about the fact that we were gathered here together in this way. Obviously, the pandemic has accelerated this digitization, and we've covered some of those case studies within the Islamic economy sectors. Now, the country indicator tool that we have in the report is the Global Islamic Economy Indicator. I wanted to highlight, start off by a little bit of a note on methodology. So when we speak of the ranking, you have that context. Number one, the ranking here represents how strong is the ecosystem of the 81 countries we evaluate in this ranking vis-a-vis development of Islamic economy. So the ranking purely doesn't talk about who is performing the best in financial metrics. It's showing an aggregate view of the strongest ecosystem to enable the development of Islamic economy. And hence we have 4 key criteria for each of the sector. One is financial, second is regulatory environment, third is how well is the awareness within the country around these sectors, and finally social impact. So the indicator is a composite index of 49 metrics around these 4 dimensions, broken down for each of these 7 sectors. And now with that context, and so 2 more things, the ranking is also relative to the size of the country. So, so we factor that aspect, as well as the ranking is weighted heavily towards the sizes of the sector in terms of proportionally how big they are. And with that proportionality, Islamic finance this year has a 56% weightage in the ranking, followed by 24% in food. So having all of these factors, in fact, now I can share with you that the ranked Malaysia continues to lead the ranking at #1 this year. We see Saudi Arabia, who has moved up the ranking, and primarily on the heels of their strong performance in Islamic finance. UAE is ranked #3 in the ranking. It holds a very strong position in the Islamic economy, and Indonesia at #4, which has also moved up a ranking, showing their continuous climb and focus on Islamic finance and the other economy sectors too. We'll talk about UK, but just as a reference point, as and I think we had a poll question about it, and some of you answered. I think the highest response was 15. In fact, UK is ranked 22nd, and given this criteria I mentioned, across the 81 countries looked at. However, one of the exciting things coming into the UK point is going to be that UK is a big mover in the ranking when it comes to food and Muslim-friendly travel, fashion, cosmetics, and recreation. So certainly, as Iman mentioned in the beginning, and Mr. Abdulla Awar also alluded to, UK is certainly moving fast and is a prominent player in context of its growth and opportunity. This year's investment tracking was also very extensive. I will not spend too much time here, although I'm sure Mr. Iqbal and Ms. Stella will have a lot of interest in this data set that we have. If you'll see, out of the $11.8 billion worth of investments tracked, which showed a negative 13% growth year on year, the highest percentage, about 52%, was related to food, and then 42% related to Islamic finance, and then the remaining were in the other lifestyle sectors. From a category of type of investors, 55% of those transactions were M&A, 38% venture capital, and only about 6% private equity. Another prominent consideration here was the geographic region. So Indonesia, Malaysia, and UAE led the number of transactions in the transactions covered during this period by us. Getting to the real insights from the report. So the report covers development, but what are the opportunities going forward? The report has identified 33 signals of opportunities, and this is really significant, especially in a year of crisis, if I may call 2020, but every crisis has its opportunity, and we're blessed to be able to address these opportunities and contribute. One of the big ones, and I will not touch on all of them, I'll touch on two major mega themes, if I may say so. First is if you see the top 5 exporting halal product countries in the world, they are in fact today the top 5 countries hit by the pandemic, COVID-19. So the US, Brazil, France, Russia, India, these are the top 5 halal product exporters in the world. And today they're in fact the top countries hit by COVID-19. This has caused a tremendous disruption of the supply chain of halal products, which is about $250 billion of products being traded under the halal products category. And hence, we're seeing a lot of opportunities where governments are focusing on food security, investments, domestic investments, to bring the supply chain closer to them. The other broader theme is digitization and the acceleration of digitization. And you're seeing it in Islamic finance, and I'm sure we're going to speak and hear about that. But you're also seeing it in other sectors. The one I want to highlight on these is media and recreation. And there's a lot of entrepreneurship coming from UK in this context as well. Online gaming, online entertainment, as you all know, online learning, etc. And there's a lot of opportunity, and we're seeing growth, and we see that as a small signal. So in my last 2 minutes, just to highlight the key data points from UK, Islamic finance assets, $21.7 billion is what we estimated in 2019. However, at a 27% increase, which is a very strong sign, UK has attracted 2.4 million Muslim tourists. This is obviously pre-COVID, but shows the importance of UK. And the domestic market itself has a $26 billion lifestyle spend, we estimate, which is its own domestic market, let alone the export opportunity. From an export point of view, UK did about $3.8 billion of exports in 2019, ranking at 21st. 1.5% of the total $250+ billion of exports that took place in 2019, showing a great area of opportunity. And in our pre-discussion with Ms. Stella and Mr. Iqbal, I was saying, how could this area be a potential area of consideration for UK's trade development vis-a-vis the challenges coming forth through Brexit. So I'm sure we're going to speak to that. The report covers some various developments from UK as well. And I'll conclude by inviting all of you to come to go to salamgateway.com, download the report, but also interact with our interactive tool. We now have an interactive tool where you can go to each sector, see where UK is and the other countries are across the various aspects that were covered in the report. And you'll see tremendous deeper insights that you can gather from the report. With this, I will stop and thank you so much. And I think I will defer the video as well, Iman, just so we can transition to our next important session. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi-uddin. And unfortunately, we couldn't play our launch video. However, I encourage you all to please visit salamgateway.com and you can find our launch video that Mr. Rafi-uddin has very well covered during the key insights presentation as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so moving forward, your panel is now ready. A gentle reminder to all that you have direct access to the panel, so kindly use the Q&A chat box to ask any questions, and our moderator, Mr. Abdulla, will try to cover as many questions as possible during the allotted time. And before we begin, let's have one more poll question out pertaining to the Islamic finance ecosystem of UK. All right, so the question is, how much do you think was the increase in the UK's Islamic finance assets in 2019? Well, this is more like testing your knowledge if you were actually paying attention, because Mr. Rafi-uddin did cover this aspect. And no doubt that UK's Islamic finance is really growing fast in the non-OIC markets. So do you think it was 0, 14, 27, or 35% increase from the previous year? And surely our prestige panelists will cover these aspects of Islamic finance space of the United Kingdom. So without further ado, Mr. Abdulla, for the next 45 minutes, over to you. And please let's have the answers out as well.
Thank you very much, Iman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody to this launch event for the UK. It's my absolute privilege to moderate this panel today. I have the pleasure of introducing two real stewards of the Islamic finance industry globally, and especially here in the UK, Brother Iqbal Khan, CEO of Fajr Capital, and Stella Cox, Managing Director of DD Cap. Before we launch into the panel, a little bit about myself. I am an entrepreneur. I am a co-founder and principal at Ellipsis, which is a research advisory and investment management firm. We advocate for technology, fintech, especially within the ethical and Islamic finance space, and with a real angle on sustainable finance. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of people on the call throughout my career, and really look up to them as real mentors within the industry. And I think there's a lot that can be learned from their experience and the things they are focused on today. If I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, we could probably spend 45 minutes just running through the entirety of everything they've done in this industry. So I'm going to just jump straight into the first question, and hopefully a lot of their experience will come out in their responses. So normally we start with the lady on the panel, but in yesterday's briefing call, Stella was adamant that we get the wisdom of Brother Iqbal's experience. So Brother Iqbal, I'll turn to you first, and really help us set the scene in terms of the UK's historic Islamic finance pedigree, and how this is positioning the UK in the global Islamic economy context today.
Thank you very much, Brother Abdul Hasib. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh, everybody. I mean, the UK has a very rich and very varied history of trade, commerce, finance with the Islamic world. And in fact, our first recorded interaction on Islamic finance itself goes back around 1,230 years. Now the question is, was Islamic finance industry even in existence at that time. So I was in Cardiff and I was shown a minted coin by King Offa, which was made in 796 AD. And that coin is in the British Museum. And it had on one side Arabic inscription, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. And King Offa had the Welsh inscription, meaning on the other side. And King Offa did this because he wanted to trade with the Spanish Moors. But having said that, the historical context about trade, commerce, Britain, when we were living in the Pax Britannica age, had a huge mercantilist history of trade, commerce, and doing business in the Islamic world. But the modern day Islamic finance actually started in the 70s. And British institutions, and Stella would be one of those people who can vouch for it, is that such as Kleinwort Benson, such as the big clearinghouse banks, and our law firms and our accounting firms acted as advisors and correspondent bankers to the emerging and evolving Islamic finance industry. So that's where we started. And initially we used to do a lot of trade and commodity financing. And in the 70s and the 80s, when the rates were high and inflation was a challenge, Islamic finance liquidity came in handy. And a lot of UK-based financial institutions acted either as principals or intermediaries to get funding from the fast-growing Islamic finance industry. And I think what is very unique about UK's experience is that the support for Islamic finance has been across the political divide. So we have in the Parliament an all-parliamentary committee for socially responsible investments and community banking. And that committee, which was then in the 90s, headed by some very capable people who led that plan, and Chancellor Gordon Brown talked about the concept in the 90s about the UK being the gateway to Islamic finance and playing a leadership role there. And then I think we had the World Islamic Economic Forum held in London in 2013, when Prime Minister David Cameron gave a keynote speech and announced that the government-led Sukuk initiative and appointed a cabinet minister to lead the effort. The then mayor and now our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, also supported the World Islamic Economic Forum, and he recognized and he wanted to see London playing a leadership role in all those areas. But like any initiative, it is led by people. And I think the first person I want to pay tribute is the then Governor, Lord Eddie George, who I had the distinct privilege to work when the Muslim community, through the Muslim Council of Britain, wanted to launch home financing products, business financing products in a Sharia compliant manner. And at that time, the all-parliamentary committee, led by Tony Coleman, and all other members supported it unanimously. And Lord Eddie George, in a disposition to that committee, said, we want to introduce Islamic finance so that British Muslims can be more British and more Muslim at the same time, so that we can take away the conflict which happens between your practicing your faith on an individual basis and societal choices. And of course, our academic institutions, our research institutions have played a very important role. Durham University have got a dedicated program in the business school. The Oxford University has Oxford Center for Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, where they have a dedicated chair for Islamic finance. So our academic institutions are working in partnership with our government to collaborate with various countries at the G2G level, at the public sector level. And I think our ECGD, for example, has got an financing facility which British exporters can use to export from Britain and get Sharia compliant export credit financing. Now that's a phenomenal step because it creates goodwill for British exporters because you are being sensitive to the needs of the importers. So I think, Brother Abdul Basir, we have a huge goodwill as Britain with the Islamic world, and we have a tradition of Islamic finance.
So Stella, moving to you, how do you see that pedigree really setting us up for the future, and where are the growth areas from an Islamic finance perspective?
Okay, well, thank you. And first of all, can I say what an honour and a privilege it is for me to be here as well today. First of all, this report I think is an incredible body of work, and the reference point it gives us with the build of information over the past years to the point that it's reached now is quite incredible. And also, I'm delighted to be here today with Iqbal, who I've worked with for 30 years, probably longer than both of us care to refer to, but I will do just to embarrass him. And also with you, Abdul Hasib, who I see as being one of the generation of new business leaders here in the UK that's going to take our industry forward. So my privilege entirely. And Iqbal has touched upon our past, and how can I follow that? But I like to think that the UK does have a very prominent role in the global Islamic finance ecosystem, with London being one of the leading hubs. And one reason that the UK has managed to achieve what it has is due to supportive government policy. Iqbal's alluded to the fact that the build out of Islamic financial architecture here in the UK has been something that's ongoing. And excuse me, it started at the beginning of my career back in the 1980s, when actually the fledgling Islamic institutions were coming to the UK and really looking for infrastructure and for assets that they could deploy funding into. Gosh, I'm struggling a bit here, excuse me again. And that's where London's financial architecture and infrastructure and financial infrastructure organisations actually came to add value. And we know very well that a lot of that funding was deployed into assets that were originated in the UK through transactions that were arranged by UK banks and financial intermediaries that were advised upon by professional advisory firms here in the UK, and that in one extent or another used UK infrastructure, including the London Metal Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, and to some extent Lloyd's of London, the insurance hub as well. In terms of our domestic proposition here in the UK, the work commenced with the Bank of England back in 2000. And really the focus then was looking at what precluded the UK from enabling the development and access of Sharia compliant financial products and structures. And it was decided that there was nothing really in the regulatory code that was prohibitive, but actually there were some issues around particularly tax that were causing an issue. And there was a lot of work by the UK authorities in combination with the practitioners here in the UK to resolve and to create a level playing field to enable the offering of those financial products and services. Following that, it paved the way for authorisation of Islamic banks in the UK and enabled the UK to start to build out its Islamic capital markets infrastructure. Iqbal also talked about the World Islamic Economic Forum back now in 2013 and the inaugural Shikoh that was issued in 2014. Some of the exciting things that have happened since, such as engagement by UK Export Finance, our export credit agency, that through its own guarantee enabled the arrangement of a Sharia compliant facility for Emirates that was and scored a number of firsts in the aviation sector at the time, be it Sharia compliant or not. And I think all of these in combination have grown the UK's Islamic financial sector footprint and expertise beyond any other offering in any Western markets nation. Now, you were asking me about what happens next, because we do get a lot of criticism. And, you know, we're off the back of the Bank of England announcing that it's in the final straits of putting its Sharia compliant liquidity facility in place for those banks that have requirement for it in the UK. There's been a bit of a checkered response to that. Some people have been very positive, and some people have said, well, you know, it's about a decade too late, and why hasn't it happened more quickly? But from my experience of working as a practitioner here in the industry, there are always things that are happening. And, you know, one way or another, it was a good thing that the UK was the first Western sovereign to issue a Sukuk. It's a great thing that we will be in a similar position in terms of this, this liquidity facility, because it shows that there is, albeit sometimes not as smoothly connected as we might like, this ongoing connectivity between private sector and between government that enables us to move forward and highlight what is needed by the industry here, be it infrastructure, be it standard, be it policy formation, be it best practice. You know, we can work together to achieve that for the best effect of our industry. But moving forward, I think we're in a little bit of a point of reflection and refocus. Those of us who are working here in the UK in Islamic financial services do know that we have been in consultation with the UK government, who sees its connection, which has 30, 40 years of history, into the global Islamic financial economy as being very important moving forward. And it's reaching out to market, to practitioners, to financial industry organisations here in the UK to take their views and to see where industry thinks policy formation is best placed moving forward, how the strategies can be supported by private sector, where our outreach should be in terms of our trade and our market connections, and how we can all work together to achieve that. So that's interesting, because to my knowledge, that's been focused on banking and capital markets, which are established, but we've also a very vibrant dialogue that's ongoing with our fintech community here, and there's a whole new ecosystem created around fintech right now, and also technologies related to the broader halal economy, which we'll talk about later. And of course, just before I conclude these opening remarks, it would be remiss of me to say that we're just almost at the end of the Brexit transition period. And of course, the UK is looking very closely at its trade partnerships and the opportunities that it has moving on from that position.
Thank you, Stella. We've got a few more set panel questions that I'll run through with Brother Iqbal and Stella, but I encourage everyone in the audience to ask questions using the Q&A box, and we will leave time at the end to direct your questions to our esteemed panelists. But moving on from that question, Brother Rafi quite rightly outlined, you know, the 7 sectors within the Islamic economy, the distinction between Islamic finance being the part of the financial economy and the other sectors being part of the real economy. Really, the role of Islamic finance when it's fully functional should be to facilitate trade within that real economy. There's often been a criticism that financial services generally doesn't support the real economy, and Islamic finance as a part of that is as guilty. In your assessment, Brother Iqbal, how have we fared to date? What are some of the challenges that you see for the financial economy in supporting the real economy, and where's that room for improvement?
Thank you, Brother Abdul Hasib. So firstly, how have we fared? I think we've been in the UK tinkering around the edges, essentially correspondent banking products and services, our law firms, our accounting firms advising our universities doing things which are good, but we have really not harnessed the full potential of the Islamic finance proposition. And this is not just true about UK, it is also true about most of the countries in the world. Stella referred to with Brexit and COVID coming in at the same time. So we have a double whammy. Our budget deficits are very high and they will continue to balloon and the only way to bring economic growth is to understand that you can pump in liquidity, but you cannot create economic growth. You cannot create sustainability. You cannot create viability of businesses. Businesses and solvency is created by creating an enabling environment. So Islamic finance has always been about connecting the financial economy to the real economy on a mudaraba-based system, i.e. that you create a series of funds which invest into the real economy, such as venture capital, SMEs, infrastructure, you have PFI initiatives. So there are huge opportunities for the UK to play a role by creating an enabling regulation which will bring in FDIs. Because the only way out of this crisis is to create economic growth for the next 10 to 15 years so that the deficit which was accumulated pre-COVID and the deficit post-COVID and post-Brexit, which will balloon, is brought into control. And now this applies to all the other economies as well. The other big challenge is this, that our pension funds, our endowment funds in the UK, but globally as well, are under tremendous pressure. And there is one area where we need to focus on is to create sustainable, ethical, Sharia compliant alpha. In a world in which the interest rates are at zero, they're going to stay at a very low rate, and where your fixed income securities allocations are going to give you, at best, no returns, low returns or no returns. And if 35–40% of your portfolio becomes a liability, not an asset, where do you go to create Sharia compliant alpha? The actuarial people tell us that for pensions to be viable, you need to create a return pattern of 7.5% to 8%. Now, for that to happen, you need to create this linkage between the financial economy and the real economy. And I think governments in the United Kingdom, but all across the world, should consider creating funds and seed capitalizing those funds and bringing in the best managers to act as catalysts in all those sectors which are growth sectors. And we should play to our strength. Our biggest strengths are venture capital, our universities, where there are big ideas happening. Our biggest strength is the PFI sector. Our biggest strength. So there are lots of areas which we can mobilize that on. So I think the future is huge, provided that the government moves in this direction. Issuing a sukuk or issuing a liquidity facility is good, but good is not enough when you are in crisis, and good is not enough when your vision is of greatness. So I hope that our country would tap the Islamic finance resources, which will bring opportunities for investors in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and Malaysia to invest into these emerging opportunities in the UK.
Stella, I think from your perspective, much like Brother Iqbal, you're an investor in this space as well as a practitioner. Where do you see that role for the UK in the real economy, or the UK Islamic finance space in the real economy, and how are you facilitating that globally?
It's a very interesting question, and Iqbal's remarks were equally pertinent. The coexistence of so much Islamic financial sector capability and capacity within the UK has really, over the years, it's created significant additional benefit for the UK. And Iqbal mentioned it's made the UK a very attractive destination for Sharia compliant investment. Our government often refers to it, you read our literature, and those funds were flowing in from the GCC and Southeast Asia, but traditionally those investment flows have been deployed to real estate, and I see infrastructure. I would say real estate linked aspects of infrastructure, but nevertheless, we've been a popular destination. And the important thing that we do now is that we look to show effectively the proposition that we have now for investors, and we transfer the focus of that funding so that they are supporting the development of our own halal economy here. It moves beyond Sharia compliant finance, as we heard earlier, into the areas that have been touched upon in the report that include fashion, food, pharmaceuticals, and many of those are injecting the most exciting momentum into our economy here, particularly in this post-COVID environment as we recover. In terms of fintech, because that's probably where I and DDCAP are most closely aligned, there's evidence even now that we're starting to create here in the UK almost a different ecosystem and a very unique fintech capability. And I think we continue with our exploration within that particular environment to see where the Sharia compliant financial market values and practices align most closely, or otherwise have potential to develop that alignment with other subsets of sustainable and responsible finance. And we're doing that quite successfully, I think, through fintech. I mean, DDCAP has been an intermediary for Islamic financial markets for, you know, the best part of 25 years. But quite a lot of people who are on this call will know that in the past couple of years, because we ourselves were an incubated firm set up by founders with early stage venture capital, that we have some experience to give back. And, you know, we've spent the last 15 years building our own automated technology, which I have to say, as our good friend and colleague, Mr. Abdulla Awar picked up on, has probably accelerated dramatically through the strains and the challenges of COVID this year. So at DDCAP, we've started to invest, and you know, we are aligning our investments with what we do. So quite naturally, we are going to look initially at fintech here in the UK. We are also going to look at businesses that not only have exceptional strategies for fintech, but also have strong alignment to sustainable, responsible practices, which has been embedded within the core infrastructure with the culture of DDCAP, and was initially actually triggered through our engagement with our own Sharia committee since 2012, as we were looking at reassessing and reevaluating our model as we came beyond the global financial crisis. So we're starting to invest. In terms of what we need to do here in the UK, we need to keep government focused on what's happening. I mean, Abdul Hasib, you and Haris Irfan put shoulders to the wall to make sure that we could launch the UK Islamic FinTech panel, which most people think is a government initiative here. And actually it's not. It's a private sector collaboration, which I'm delighted to say has subsequently enjoyed attention and support and a channel of communication with government, so that panel can alert government to problems that our new businesses are facing here, and also to draw on whatever support and funding accessibility is possible. But we've had to do this as private sector, and it's been very important that we collaborate to do so. So that's been an extremely important forum. But in terms of developing the halal economy and the wider economy here, and linking Islamic finance into the real economy, I think you can see from what a lot of those businesses are doing themselves that it is doing just that. It is bringing in connection in a different way, without necessarily the intermediation of banks, into fostering other developments. So, for example, Islamic markets was one fintech that DDCAP has invested in, but through its own nimble approach and its own adaptability, we've seen that business move out into all sorts of different edtech strategies. And to do that, it's been connecting directly with British universities, who themselves, I'm finding out through my own experience, have had a really exciting and strong stream of entrepreneurs who are also looking to develop a whole range of different halal economy businesses, looking for funding. That brings me into the remit of certain other interesting new businesses that are setting up in here in the UK, including, you know, Angel Investors Club, which is a new business itself, where I'm doing some mentoring, but also they are looking not just to support new financial sector businesses in raising capital for technology rollout, but they're also looking at the broader halal economy proposition. So I think in total, the summary of what I'm saying is that there is almost a sort of organic development that's happening here in the UK, but a lot of that is created by private sector endeavour here. So it's the efforts that we are placing, using our experience of the past, using the work that we've done, using our traditional background in building a more traditional financial services sector to support Islamic economy business here in the UK, to bring in these new talents, these new technologies. But you know, we have challenges that we're facing at the moment. We've got to fund them. We have opportunities to fund them from overseas, as I said at the beginning of the remarks. We also have to build the awareness and the connectivity here within the UK, so that we can start to motivate and develop some of those opportunities ourselves. And we also have to be very conscious of keeping our government aware that this is happening, aware of what a contribution we as a sector think that we can make through rebooting this economy as we move forward over this most challenging year, and using our best efforts to persuade them of all they need to do in terms of setting policy, strategy, and even motivational opportunity to help us to support its development.
Thank you, Stella. Thanks very much for everyone on the webinar who's been sending in questions. Quite a few interesting ones, some actually which I'll try and wrap into the next couple of questions in the interest of time. So Stella, you touched on what industry's been doing over the last few years, and thank you for highlighting the work of the UK Islamic FinTech panel. I think it's been a really important initiative and in bringing that community together. And I can see some of our members are on the call today. But there is this sense more recently over the last 6 months that I've experienced that there's an atmosphere of the UK wanting to recharge Islamic finance for the next phase. And I think a lot of that has been brought on by the onset of COVID and Brexit. There's a couple of questions here around, what's the government doing around Islamic finance in supporting this ecosystem? Brother Iqbal Asari is asking if we have any inside information on the UK sovereign sukuk, which I'm not sure we do, but let's see. Do we think the Bank of England's new facility is going to make Islamic finance more competitive? So I think we'll sort of wrap that up into, what's the government focus on Islamic finance? Stella, I know you're heavily involved in that in terms of the responses to Treasury, and what role can we see the UK playing with sort of emerging areas like fintech, sustainability, supporting a COVID-19 recovery, and what the UK can do post Brexit to cooperate with other countries on halal trade as well. Stella, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm actually looking at the questions at the moment, so I'll run through, and I'm sure Iqbal will do the same. And there are a few others that he can probably give a completely different perspective. But just looking at the order that they came in, and Brexit and new opportunities for the UK to accelerate in Islamic finance. Well, I think that Iqbal and I have both been quite clear that we think that trade partnerships are sort of important, and that one thing that Brexit does give us is an opportunity to reset and explore where we might work going forward. And Abdul Hasib, you're right, government has been in consultation with a lot of industry stakeholders. And one of the things it always wants to know is where we should reach out and which other markets we should work with in the years ahead. And our UK Islamic financial sector outreach has historically been very focused on other leading industry hubs in the Middle East and Asia. And sometimes, as Abdullah said, sometimes we compete, but also we've collaborated frequently and often to best effect. And I'm sure we will continue to do that. But what's important is that we don't just sit and assume that the same partners that we've had for bilateral Islamic financial sector and Halal Economy projects overseas are the same that we should have going forward. So it's important that as a community we have our input and we keep our channels open to government so that we can reflect on that. But yes, Brexit is going to open new opportunities because government here is looking bilaterally to the most important trade partnerships. And in the past, Abdul Hasib, you worked, I think, about a year ago with me and the City UK in an initiative, a bilateral initiative spearheaded for Turkey by Bursa Istanbul, to look at developing communication and prospective business opportunities between fintech in Turkey and the UK. So there are things like that are happening. In the very important sustainable, responsible space, there's been work this year, I think, between the UK and Malaysia that's been focused on Malaysian initiatives to develop climate change protocols that are relevant to its Islamic banking community. But it's equally important that we keep the UK market in touch and our own community in touch with what we're doing in those overseas partnerships. My dear friend, Mr. Iqbal Asari, Iqbal, I hope you're well, has asked any news on the renewal of the UK sovereign sukuk. And that is a comment. I know that the EST, John Glenn, was speaking about that about a week ago. And You know, consultation took place at the end of last year before everybody became focused on Brexit and COVID. And I think had all things been equal, that second Sukuk would have been issued by now. And I think the EST supported that view by saying pretty much the same about a week ago. And as far as government's concerned and what they're reporting back to us in industry is that the decision is made, everything is pretty much ready. It's just a timing situation, really frustrating for us to know in industry. And as Iqbal says, issuing Sukuk, having Bank of England facilities aren't necessarily the be all and end all for our future strategy and what we're going to do. But there is some merit. And just before I hand over to Iqbal, I'll pick up on another question about the Bank of England facility. You know, and Hassan Jivraj has asked a question about Islamic retail products. I mean, one of the issues of the Islamic banking community here has been that they have been concerned that the lack of the facility depletes their competitiveness, and it means that their cost of funds is relatively more expensive, and that has an impact on the competitiveness of their offering into the retail community. Now, I would caveat that with saying that actually we don't have an extensive range of offerings right now into UK retail from the banks, but I think that's been one of the things that has been in the back of the authorities' minds, that this is a project. The Bank of England made a commitment that it would get this done some years ago now. It's been out for global consultation. I know that a lot of our partners in other jurisdictions have been keen that the Bank of England should complete this step. The banks have indicated in the past that it's important to them. Those banks are authorised and existing in the UK, and it is in the final stages of completion. Shall I stop here and hand over to Iqbal to answer some of the questions?
I was gonna say, in the interest of time, I'll maybe pose the final question to Brother Iqbal, and maybe he can add into a comment to the last question as well. Brother Iqbal, we've had a few questions around specific sectors within Islamic finance. Firstly, the future for retail banking, given some of the challenges that the retail banks have had, what we see as the future for Takaful and Retakaful in the UK, and Islamic wealth management as well as a sector. Those are three specific areas that came across. And our final question was really focused around the UK's strong framework for philanthropy. So I wonder if you could touch across those subsectors within Islamic finance with your views on you know, what the outlook is for those sectors.
Sure. So firstly, I want to say that, you know, here I have few suggestions that the UK government, through Stella and other colleagues on this call, should take up. One is that, you know, we need to have an all-party approach to investments. Let me tell you why we do this, because as one of the largest investors in renewable energy, in food to electricity companies, we invested on a certain premise, and midway of the investment, government changed and policy got changed. Foreign investors like continuity and consistency. That's very, very important. And so the government should form an all-party group which comes up with policies which are there, which have longevity, which are not linked to parliamentary elections or anything else. And that's something which we should look at. But coming back to the wealth management and retail products, the Muslim community banking market, and having addressed that market and tried to address that market through HSBC Amana, for a long time has suffered from fragmentation. There is no way of approaching the entire market. There are subsets of the market which you have to approach. And if you don't have a large enough market, you cannot get the interest of large players to create products dedicated for you. So in my view, for wealth management, we should have an alignment with CSR investors, with investors who are indigenous, but they invest as per SDG goals, and we need to find a common ground to come up with products. The good news is that ETFs have really made that easier, so wealth management is much easier. The challenge remains in the home financing market, where generally Muslims feel that they're paying a tax called cost of being a Muslim, COBM, which is the risk weightage for the home financing was a challenge. The the FCA and the Bank of England have addressed that to the satisfaction. The new liquidity facilities also addressed it. But till the time this market has a critical mass, it will not be able to grow and attract the interest of large financial institutions. And if you don't have large financial institutions focusing on it, niche institutions would struggle because their cost of distribution would make the product very expensive. Now, this is where digitalization comes in, and I know there are a number of initiatives. We hope some of these digital platforms will come to fruition and would offer the Muslim community opportunities to invest into. Moving on to philanthropy, I think one of the big roles to create goodwill is to look at our own philanthropy sector. UK has a very rich tradition. We have very deep laws through the Charities Commission on philanthropy, and we have by and large done a fantastic job. How do you internationalize philanthropy from the UK? So for example, we took a charity called My Bank, which is a charity targeted at financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And we took it to Brunei, to Saudi Arabia. When you internationalize a local CSR initiative, a local charity, take them international, you build bridges, what I call the alliance of goodness. And that creates a huge amount of goodwill for our country, for our businesses, and for our various initiatives. And it opens up new avenues of collaboration and partnership. And I think this is an area which is a very low-hanging fruit for the government, easy to win. And this can become our front runner behind which our businesses can come. I also believe SMEs are very important for the country. UK's economy's backbone, like any other economy, are the SME sector. We need to have an SME fund which targets those SMEs which can be attractive to the Sharia compliant investor. Globally, the search for alpha is driving investors to move across countries. Traditionally, Awqaf, Hajj funds, Zakat funds were only investing in their local markets. Now they are being compelled to move to international markets. And as they do, we must position ourselves as UK to bring some of that FDI back into the UK. Because if we don't, just collecting more taxes from the same people will not solve the problem of the deficit. Deficits are solved by growing the business, and growing the business needs an inclusive approach. So I hope that the government would adopt these policies, which can have a huge impact.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Stella, do you want to take a couple of minutes because we're coming to the end of our time?
Very quickly. I know we're tight on time. I agree with much of what Iqbal has said. I think the problem that we often have here in the UK is having to build out our models and build out our capability within what it's feasibly possible to do. And I agree with Iqbal that it's our job, and as you did with the FinTech panel, Abdul Hasib, to keep pushing and to keep making sure that there is this connectivity forged and that we keep government aware and connected. In terms of SMEs, we've looked around the Muslim world, and a lot of the authorities have done great work in support of SMEs. Here, yes, 99% of our businesses, and I think three fifths of relevant employment are within SMEs in the UK. I think there is a dialogue that's going on. The British Business Bank has been a conduit for various of the measures that government has put in place to support business through this crisis. Hasn't always been particularly effective, and straight away when measures are pushed in place quickly, there isn't always an immediate reflection on how that might impact on Sharia compliant businesses. So I think it's important that those of us who are working collectively in industry keep government in tune with where those issues are, and also make sure that we forge our own connections with institutions like British Business Bank and explain to them what is needed and how we believe that they can contribute. And unfortunately, it takes longer than we might have to do this. One other thing that I hadn't mentioned that I think is very positive this year, because a lot of us are working around sustainable and responsible practice. And in fact, globally, Islamic finance is adopting its own strategy for engagement. And I would say that if you look at growth of Sharia compliant asset management here in the UK, quite a lot of that in terms of the leap in asset management and in assets under management has been the result of many best of breed firms who are creating new strategies for portfolios that are sustainable, responsible, ESG compliant. I think we have a little bit of interpretation and language issue in that space itself, but are also Sharia compliant. A lot going on there. A new Sharia compliant ESG ETF that's launched on the stock exchange this year. But most importantly, the UK Islamic Finance Council, with the endorsement of HM Treasury, has this year convened an Islamic finance task force to focus on delivery against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by the Islamic community, or the Islamic financial community, I should say. And that first meeting was hosted here in the UK, but this has global remit, and it's important because I think that the steering that's come out of the UK and the UK Islamic Finance Council is compelling other authorities, other regulators that are within our global remit to combine and to work collaboratively to best effects to create standards. So that task force is underway. As I said, the inaugural meeting hosted by the UK, but the second meeting that took place only a couple of weeks ago was hosted by the State Bank of Pakistan, which launched its own SDG Islamic Finance focused chapter at the same time. So I think the thought leadership is coming to play. I'm not saying that we do everything perfectly. You've heard from my remarks today, there's an awful lot more that we need to do, but actually working out what we have within our infrastructure that can make things happen and using that to best effect and using our connectivity to government to make sure that that support is there is the best way that we can accelerate matters.
Thank you very much, Stella, and thank you, Brother Iqbal. That brings us to the end of our time on our panel. Before I hand back to Iman, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone on the DinarStandard team for all their effort in producing the report this year. To do anything 8 years running is phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to download the report and read it, I really encourage you to do so. If you're a geek like me, the dashboard they've created is a fantastic tool to play around with and get more insight. I really hope today's panel session has helped you get some more richer insight from a UK perspective. I'll hand back to Iman now, who hopefully will take us through the poll result as well for the final question, which we didn't get a chance to do, and to close the session. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Abdul Hasib and our dear panelists. And here are the results. So to the question of how much do you think was the increase in the UK's Islamic finance asset? Well, 48% of you have said 27%, which is correct. 27% was the increase in the Islamic finance assets this year, 2019. Thank you once again, Mr. Abdul Hasib, and our dear speakers, Mr. Iqbal Khan and Ms. Stella Cox, for an informative discussion. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Abdulla Awar for his earlier keynote address, and Mr. Rafi-uddin Shikoh for his key report insights and the UK context. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed and found the UK launch of the SGIE, which is State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2020 and 2021, informative. And if you did, we are back with a series of virtual and hybrid launch events. So do stay tuned and register on Salam Gateway. That's it from my side, Iman Ali, and from the rest of the team, goodbye.